12 years ago, on the night I was supposed to celebrate my future, my family pushed me out into the winter darkness and told me I was an ugly, disabled fool. I remember the cold first, then the silence, then the realization that no one was coming after me. My name is Alara Quinn, and I'm 30 years old now. I work as a content strategist and visual designer, though back then I could barely read a menu without the letters slipping away from me. I grew up with dyslexia, a stutter, and a family who treated both like proof that I was defective. They didn't say it outright, not until that graduation night. But they didn't need to. Shame was the wallpaper of our house. You just learned to live inside it. Adrian, my older brother by 2 years, was the golden one, the son my parents adored, the one who never stumbled over words or needed extra time on tests, the one who learned early that power comes easiest to people who speak without hesitation. He used to mock my stutter until tears blurred my vision, then laugh because the crying only made it worse. My parents never corrected him. They just told me to toughen up. But on the night I turned 18, everything snapped. The air tasted like metal from the cold. My diploma was still in my hand, still warm from the ceremony, when Adrian leaned in close, so close I could smell the cologne he saved for special occasions, and whispered, "You're an ugly, disabled fool." And my mother didn't gasp. My father didn't scold him. They just stared at me, waiting for my reaction, like my pain was a show they were tired of watching. I tried to defend myself. My voice cracked. The stutter made every word feel like a betrayal. And I'll never forget the way my father exhaled, disappointed, annoyed, and said, "This is what we mean. You can't even speak properly. You embarrass us, Alara." That was the moment something inside me curled inward and died. The argument escalated fast. My mother told me I was ungrateful. Adrian told me I was ruining the night. And within minutes, my father was stuffing my belongings into a trash bag like he was taking out waste. I remember standing in the doorway, stunned, while he held the bag out to me and said, "Go figure out your life. Maybe then you'll learn to act normal." Then the door shut. The lock slid. Just like that, my world ended. I stood outside in my thin graduation gown, my breath fogging in front of me, the cold slicing through the fabric like it wanted to carve me open. My fingers burned, then numbed. I waited for the door to open, waited for someone to realize they'd gone too far. But no one came. I walked away because I had no choice. Because standing there felt like admitting they were right about me. Because if I didn't move, the cold would freeze me to the steps. What I didn't know yet, couldn't possibly know, was that the girl who walked into that night was gone forever. And the woman I would become, she would be stronger, quieter, sharper than they ever imagined. But that transformation had a price I would pay alone. I didn't walk far that first night, just far enough for the house to shrink into a dark square in the distance, small enough that I could pretend it had never been mine. I ended up behind a shuttered gas station, curled behind a dumpster because the walls at least blocked the wind. I pressed my face into my knees and tried to breathe quietly, like the night itself might shatter if I made too much noise. I didn't sleep, not really. I drifted in and out of cold, fear, and disbelief, asking myself over and over, what did I do that was so unforgivable? And then another voice whispered back, "You were born wrong." It sounded like my mother's voice. It felt like the truth. The next few days bled into each other. Cheap food, bus station bathrooms, walking until my feet blistered. I tried shelters, but they were loud, chaotic, and full of people who looked as bruised as I felt. My stutter made talking painful, so I kept quiet and avoided eye contact until I found a dingy room for rent over a closed-down pawn shop. It cost nearly everything I earned from working tables at a greasy diner, but it was four walls that no one could throw me out of. My life shrank to the simplest math: wake up, work, eat whatever I could afford, sleep in a bed that smelled like damp carpet and loneliness. Even speaking became something I rationed, like food. If I stuttered while taking orders, customers rolled their eyes or pretended not to hear me. Some laughed. I got used to keeping conversations short, keeping my head down, keeping myself small. I became a ghost in my own life, quiet, functional, forgettable. Therapy started because the diner supervisor recommended a free clinic after catching me crying in the storage room with a stack of ketchup bottles in my hands. She didn't ask what happened, didn't offer pity, just scribbled the address on a napkin and said, "Go talk to someone who's paid to care." I expected therapy to fix me instantly. It didn't. It peeled me open instead. Session after session, I learned to say things out loud that felt like crimes. I wasn't the problem. I didn't deserve it. I want a life that feels like mine. But healing isn't linear, and my stutter didn't magically disappear just because someone told me I mattered. Trauma has a way of burrowing deep, hiding in muscles and habits, and the tightness in your chest right before you speak. Still, little by little, I stopped apologizing for existing. Then, one ordinary afternoon at the diner, something strange happened. I'd been asked to rewrite the specials board because the usual girl called out sick. My handwriting had always been neat, almost obsessively so. Dyslexia taught me to cling to any small form of control. As I drew the letters, looping them with care, a customer stared so long I thought something was wrong. "You do typography?" he finally asked. I didn't even know the word. I shook my head, embarrassed, already bracing for a joke, but he smiled instead. "No, seriously, you've got talent. You ever consider design?" The question lodged itself in me like a seed. That night, I typed graphic design basics into a computer at the public library. The letters still danced on the screen, but this time, maybe out of spite, maybe out of hunger, I danced with them. Tutorials turned into practice. Practice turned into small freelance jobs. Each tiny paycheck felt like proof that I wasn't useless. It didn't transform my life overnight, but it gave me direction, something to build instead of something to survive. And somewhere along the way, I found what I now call my found family. Not in any poetic way, just people who stayed, co-workers who scribbled encouraging notes on receipts, a therapist who told me I deserved gentleness, a roommate I bonded with over our mutual fear of eviction, a friend who said, "Your voice shakes because of what you survived, not because you're weak." They didn't replace the family I lost, but they softened the ache. Still, even with progress, with healing, with small victories, a part of me stayed frozen on that porch, 18 and unwanted. And 12 years later, when a message arrived telling me my family needed to see me, that frozen part finally cracked. 12 years is a long time to be gone, long enough to build an entirely new life, long enough to forget voices you once thought would echo in your skull forever, long enough that sometimes, when I said my own name, it felt like something I had borrowed rather than inherited. At 30, I wasn't rich or famous or untouchably successful, but I was stable, respected, and, most shocking of all to the 18-year-old version of me, safe. I had a small apartment full of plants I managed not to kill. A job where people asked for my opinion instead of mocking my voice. Clients who praised my design work. A therapist who reminded me of my progress when I forgot. My stutter never vanished, but it softened. Became something I no longer feared. Sometimes it showed up when I was tired or scared, but it didn't define me anymore. My dyslexia still tangled letters, but I had tools, strategies, and confidence. My brain wasn't broken, just wired differently. For the first time in my life, I wasn't surviving. I was living. And then the message came, a simple text from an unknown number. Your family needs to see you. It's important. My stomach sank, not out of fear but disbelief, like the past had crawled out of its grave and knocked politely on my door. I stared at the message so long the screen dimmed. I didn't answer, didn't delete it, just let it sit like a toxin I wasn't brave enough to touch. 2 days later, I received another. Please, Alara, they're not well. That please was what did it. My family never begged, never softened, never reached out, not once in 12 years. I wasn't sure if this was a trap, a manipulation, or some late-stage guilt finally catching up to them. But a part of me, the small, stupid part that still wanted answers, wouldn't let it go. So I agreed. A single word, okay. The drive back to my hometown felt like moving backward in time. Same cracked roads, same shuttered stores, same smell of cold earth and wood smoke. But arriving at my parents' house, that was different. The lawn was unkempt. The paint on the porch peeled in long, curling strips. The windows looked tired. Everything sagged, like the house itself had aged faster than the years should have allowed. I remember thinking, it looks abandoned. Then, so did I. When I knocked, it wasn't my parents who opened the door. It was Adrian. But not the Adrian I remembered. Not the golden sun with the effortless grin and cruel tongue. This Adrian looked older than me, worn, jaw tight, eyes hollow. His confidence had melted into something brittle and uncertain. For a moment, he didn't speak, just stared, as if seeing me was painful. Alara, he said finally, no sneer, no venom, just my name cracked down the middle. I waited for the apology. He didn't give one. He stepped aside to let me in, and I walked into a house that no longer felt familiar. Clutter everywhere, silence hanging heavy, a smell like dust and stale air. My mother sat in the living room, her posture stiff but her face tired in a way I had never seen. My father, once so imposing, sat hunched in an old armchair, staring at nothing like he'd forgotten what a future looked like. They didn't rush to hug me. They didn't cry or scream or celebrate. They just stared. My father spoke first. We didn't call you. Adrian did. His voice was a low rasp, stripped of authority. My mother wouldn't meet my eyes. Her lips trembled. Her hands twisted in her lap. I waited for some grand confession, some admission of wrongdoing, some flicker of regret. Instead, she whispered, "We don't remember that night the way you do." A coldness spread through me, slow, poisonous, familiar. Not disbelief, recognition. This was my real family, unchanged. They would rather rewrite history than take responsibility for it. Adrian cleared his throat like he wanted to interrupt, but my mother kept talking. You were emotional. You misunderstood us. Things got out of hand. Misunderstood. Thrown out at 18 in freezing weather. Misunderstood. My father added, You should have come back sooner. We thought you needed space. Space. That was the word they chose for abandonment. I realized then that they hadn't called me back out of love or remorse. They wanted something they weren't brave enough to say yet. And they never expected I'd show up stronger than when I left. The silence stretched between us, thick and suffocating. I felt 18 again for a moment, cold, small, disposable. But then something inside me shifted, like a door in my chest finally unlocking. I wasn't that girl on the porch anymore, and they weren't giants, just people. Flawed, frightened, fragile people. What do you want from me? I asked. My voice shook, but not from fear. It shook like a warning. My father flinched. My mother finally looked at me, really looked. And I saw something in her eyes I had never recognized before. Desperation. It's your grandmother, she said. Her will. It's complicated. There it was. Not an apology, not love, not grief over lost years. Money. They wanted me for paperwork, for legality, for convenience, for bloodline, not bond. My father sighed sharply, rubbing his temples. She left something in your name, the family house. But it's tangled in legal nonsense. We need you to sign off so you can sell it, I finished for him. They didn't deny it. Adrian stepped forward then, and for a moment I thought he would defend me. Instead, he said quietly, "It's not a big deal, Ilara. Just sign it. Don't make this harder. Don't make this harder." The same words he used when he shoved me aside during childhood fights. The same tone he used when mocking my stutter. The same voice that whispered, "Ugly, disabled fool." And hearing it again, 12 years later, with no remorse, something in me snapped back into place, but not the way they expected, not broken, aligned. I took a slow breath. "No," I said. My mother's face pinched. "Ilara, be reasonable." "You want reasonable?" I said. Reasonable would have been not throwing your teenage daughter into the freezing night. Reasonable would have been not calling my disability an embarrassment. Reasonable would have been checking if I survived. My stutter surfaced on that last word, small but present. And for the first time, I didn't try to hide it. My father scowled. "You're being dramatic. We didn't throw you out. You left in anger." A laugh escaped me, sharp, humorless. "You locked the door behind me." He looked away. Adrian crossed his arms. "So that's it? You came here just to fight?" "No," I said. "I came because you asked. I came because I thought maybe, just maybe, you'd grown, or remembered, or cared." I looked at each of them. "You didn't call me back because you wanted me. You called me because you needed something." My mother's voice cracked. "We're still your family." "No," I said softly. "You're my relatives. Family is something you build with love, with consistency, with presence. My family is the people who helped me when I had nothing, who didn't shame my voice, who didn't turn my disability into a punchline." The room felt smaller, tighter. My father muttered, "Ungrateful girl," like it was muscle memory. I straightened my shoulders. "This is the last time I'll let that word touch me." He looked up, startled. Like for the first time, he realized he no longer had authority over me. I turned to Adrian, my brother, my bully, the boy who once held all the power. "You don't get to rewrite history. You hurt me. You laughed at me. You made sure I knew I was unwanted." For a moment, something flickered in his eyes. Maybe guilt, maybe regret, but he buried it. "People grow up, move on." "I did," I said. "You didn't." The quiet that followed was suffocating. Then I walked toward the door. "Ilara," my mother called, voice breaking. "Please, we do regret things." I paused, not because I believed her, but because the little girl in me wanted so badly to. I turned slowly. "If you regret it," I said, "sit with it, learn from it, change, but don't ask me to set myself on fire just to keep you warm." Her hand trembled in the air, reaching for someone who no longer existed. "I won't sign anything," I said, "and I won't come back." My father scoffed under his breath. My mother wilted. Adrian looked confused, like he'd expected me to break, not rise. And then I stepped outside. The air was cold, sharper than I remembered. But it didn't cut this time. It cleansed. As I walked down the porch steps, I realized something profound. I was finally leaving on my own terms, not as the girl they discarded, but as the woman I fought to become. I didn't look back. Not when the door clicked shut. Not when the house disappeared behind the trees. Not when the weight of my past fell away like snow from branches. For the first time in my life, I wasn't running from something. I was walking toward myself, and it felt like freedom,